I thought I'd run through a few questions that some of you have sent to me. Just a reminder, I'm going to have that Google Meet that's available from 9 to 10. So if you have questions, I'll put an announcement up that has the link to that. So if you have additional questions, you can get on there and ask. Couple of things. If you look at number 4, if you want to check to see if it's an acute, obtuse, or a right triangle, just remember you have to take all 3 sides and square them. So we're going to take 13 squared, 18 squared, and 3 square root of 55 squared. Of course, 13 squared and 18 squared is pretty easy. Just grab your calculator and put them in there. 13 squared is 169. 18 squared, 324. And when you go to do this next problem, we have to square the 3, which is 9, times by, and you have to square the square root of 55, which is just 55. And then you times those together. So 9 times 55, 495. So this is your that's the longest side squared. Now I have to add the other 2 together and see what happens. So I'm going to go 169 plus 324. It's 493. They're not equal. That means it's not a right triangle. So it's either acute or obtuse. And if you look at it, the longest side is too long, right? The 495 is bigger than the other 2 added together. That means if the hypotenuse is too long, the angle is too big, that makes it an obtuse triangle going that way. Just be careful squaring a square root. Another question I had is with rationalizing the denominator. That's when you have a square root in the bottom of the fraction. So I wanted to go over a problem that would happen on. This is also from your review. So I'm going to look at number 14. So it wants me to find the sine of z, the cosine of z. Actually, those 2. Find the sine of x, sine of z, cosine of x, cosine of z. So let's start with just the sine of x. So sine of x is equal to, this is the opposite side. This is the hypotenuse. So we're going to take 7 over the square root of 149. So we never leave a square root on the bottom of the fraction. If it's on top, it's fine, but never on the bottom. So I'm going to times by the square root of 149 on the top and the bottom. So I end up with 7 square root of 149 over on the bottom. I times those together, the square root of 149 times the square root of 149, which is just 149. So now I've rationalized the denominator. Now I could check, I could see if something goes to both 7 and 149. I don't think there is, but let's just double check. 7 is the only thing that will go to 7. So I'm just going to check to see if 7 goes into 149. And it doesn't equally. So that's my answer. That's as far as I can go. So just make sure, again, if you've got a square root on the bottom, like I've got right here, right, you've got to times, you times it by itself. And that makes it so that now the denominator is not an irrational number. It's not a square root anymore. If the square root's on top, you don't have to worry about it. You do need to make sure the square root's simplified. So let's see, but you need to, and the fraction is simplified. The other one I had is there's a kite question here. We have to draw your own picture. So that was another question that someone asked about. Let's go ahead and take a look at that one. So it's this number 17 right here. Okay, so it says you're flying a kite with 20 feet of string extended. The angle of elevation from the spool of the kite is 67 degrees. How far off the ground is the kite if you hold the spool 5 feet off the ground? And all these problems, and you are going to have a couple, there's either 2 or 3 actually that you have to draw your own picture with, right? So here I've got my kite up here. So here's my kite. The string's extended out. Always make a right triangle to start with that, right? It says the 20 feet of string extended. So the string is from there to there. That's going to be your 20 feet. Angle of elevation is 67 degrees. Angle of elevation is always from the horizontal looking up. So if you go from the horizontal is this way, looking up, so that would be that angle right there. So that angle is 67 degrees. And then it also tells you that the spool is 5 feet off the ground. That just means when you're standing here, this side is 5. So all that means, and it wants me to find out what how far off the ground is the kite. So it wants me to find this side. It wants me to find this plus, just remember that this side's going to be 5. So we're going to find out what x is equal to, and then we have to add 5 to it because that's how high the spool is off the ground. So there's my drawing. Now pick the right trig ratio. This is the opposite. This is the hypotenuse. So we're going to do sine. So the sine of 67 equals the opposite over the hypotenuse. Okay, there's my trig ratio. I'm just going to solve there. So I'm going to times by 20, times by 20. Grab a calculator, plug that in there. Again, make sure on your test your calculator is set to degrees and not to radians. We're going to go 20 times the sine of 67. Put that in your calculator. And you end up with 18.4. So what does it say to round to? The kite is about, round your answer to the nearest 10. So 18.4. Now just make sure that's not your answer. If this is 18.4, I've got to add the 5 to it. So x came out to be 18.4 plus 5, so 23.4 feet. So just make sure on those you draw a picture, just be careful labeling the sides. The last thing I was going to show you, there was not one of these on the review. But let's say you're asked to not just solve a triangle or to find a missing piece, but you're asked to find the area. We didn't do one of these problems, but we did an area problem with a parallelogram, but not with a triangle. Let's look at number 12. So it says find the value of each variable, use sine and cosine, run your answer to the nearest 10. When I go to find this one, so we can solve this one. I think you probably did this one just fine. So this, if I find S is the opposite side, 5 is the hypotenuse, and R is the adjacent. So if I want to find S, I'm going to do the sine of 36 equals S over 5. That's bad. My S and 5 look the same. I'm going to times by 5. Plug that in a calculator. That should tell me what S is equal to. So we're going to go 5. Let's actually just leave it like that for a second. So it's 5 times the sine of 36, which is about 2.9. We'll just leave it like that for a second. So S equals 5 times the sine of 36. Okay, let's find out what R is equal to. So to find R is the adjacent side. We know the hypotenuse. So I'm going to do the cosine. Cosine of 36 equals R over 5. Times by 5, times by 5. That's what R is equal to. R equals 5 times the cosine of 36. Okay, you could plug those both in a calculator and have the answer to the question. But let's say it asks you to find the area of the triangle. What I remind you of, if you have a right triangle, you're trying to find the area of a triangle is 1/2 the base times the height. Well, in this case, the base, you can call R the base. That means S is the height because it's perpendicular to R. So you would just go 1/2 times 5 times the cosine of 36 times the height, which is 5 times the sine of 36. Then you just plug that whole thing in your calculator and you got your answer. So just remember on a right triangle, if it does ask you to find the area, it's base times height. Or you can call that the base and that the height, it doesn't matter. The base and height just have to be perpendicular to each other. So in a right triangle, you can just take whatever the two sides of your legs, because one will be the base, one will be the height. Anyway, that was, I think that answered all the questions I had up until now. If you do have more, remember you can call in from 9 to 10 on Google Meets. Again, I'll post an announcement at 9 o'clock that has the link that you can go to in order to call in. Hey, good luck on your test. Remember, it is kind of picky about like rounding. It's, you know, it has, sometimes it marks some things wrong for stupid things like that. I will look through all your answers. So after everybody's done with the test, probably tomorrow morning, I'll go through and check all the answers, and I'll make fixes where I need to make fixes. After I've done that, I'll release the test to everybody. Once I've released the test, then you can go back and fix mistakes. And I'll give you half credit back for any mistakes you fix on there. So anyway, good luck.